كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So inshallah, today what we'll be doing is we will finish off the remainder of the categories of distribution. So we talked about 14 categories where the estate of the deceased will be distributed. So we talked about 3 categories already. The funeral costs and everything else that's related to that. That's where the estate of the deceased will first be utilized for. And then if there's anything left over, we will then use to pay off any debts of the deceased. And then we talked about giving it to anyone that is bequeathed anything by the deceased. So these are 3 things, or 3 places, 3 avenues where the distribution will be done of the deceased's estate. After this, what happens is what we're going to be talking about next. So we've got the 4th category, which is now we're giving to the fixed Quranic shareholders. So we will go to the fixed Quranic shareholders at category number 4, and we'll distribute to them. And those are the ones that we've discussed already, who they are. Then we'll go to the number 5, we'll go to the agnetic shareholders. So this is these 5, up till number 5, this is common. These are important to understand. The agnetic shareholders will have a lot of detail in there, the different categories and everything, because they're important. But inshallah, we'll try to explain it in a lot of detail so it's easy for people to understand. And then we'll go through number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, up till there, the categories of distribution. Other books will have less categories, maybe 12 or even 13. And you will see, I will explain why we have included 14 categories up here. And everyone will logically understand as to why we have come up with 14 categories. Then inshallah, today we'll also get the chance to move on to the next topic of ours, which is the factors that prevent a person from inheriting. So we'll go through what are the factors, overarching factors that prevent a person from inheriting, that deprive a person from inheriting. So we'll hopefully get through the first type of, the first factor, you can say first factor that, or first type of blocking, first type of preventing inheritance. So we'll get through that inshallah for today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So now for today's session, moving on to what we were talking about. We were discussing categories of distribution where the estate of the deceased will be distributed. So if we show you here. So the next category we have is the fixed Quranic shareholders. So after doing the first 3 things we talked about, where we have the burial costs and any costs related to the actual burial of the deceased, the funeral costs and so on, that will be taken firstly from the estate, meaning the estate will be used first for this. If there is anything left over, then we will use the estate to pay off any debts that are related to the deceased. And if there is anything left over, then 1/3 of this will then go to the valid wasiyah, the valid bequests that the deceased made. And now obviously there would be at least 2/3 left over beyond the amount of the wasiyah, beyond the amount of the bequest. So that amount now, if there's no wasiyah, if there is no bequest, then we directly go to this step, which is we go to the fixed Quranic shareholders. And these are the first specific group of people who have preference in a remaining estate. And so the remaining estate, whatever's remaining, they will now get that estate. So these are those fixed Quranic shareholders, the ones that we have discussed in the tables, and we went through the father, the grandfather, and so on. And we obviously discussed it through the Quranic verse too. So now, just to summarize this, we have two groups, okay? So the first group will be fixed Quranic shareholders through lineage. We will call the Dhawil Furud and Nasabi. So Dhawil Furud and Nasabi, those who are related through Nasab, meaning through lineage. So they have a lineage relation to the deceased. So he tells you those refers to those blood relatives whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allocated a share of inheritance in the Quran. Then you have the fixed Quranic shareholders through marriage. So Dhawil Furud as-Sababi. So obviously this refers to the husband or wife, the spouse. And the reason why we're categorizing this separately, you will understand as we go along. So this is number 4. Number 5, we move on to the agnetic shareholders. Now this is something to understand quite a bit. So we will spend a bit of time understanding this agnetic shareholders. We were calling Asabat and Nasabi. Asabat means the agnetic shareholders, and Nasabi through lineage. So they have a lineage relation to the deceased. So who are these? They are agnetic shareholders. The Asabat and Nasabi are those relatives of the deceased whose lineage is traceable exclusively through males, such as sons or even daughters, fathers, grandfathers, full brothers, siblings, or sisters, agnate brothers, sisters, meaning those who are related through father, uncles, meaning father's brother, etc. So you can have son's son as well, like this. These are all agnetic shareholders. This will be understood as we go along further. Lineage is, obviously, we understand lineage is considered as taken from the male side of the family. And this group of shareholders, the previous group of shareholders, you understood, the fixed Quranic shareholders, they received a certain share, either a half or a sixth or a quarter or whatever it was, according to what the Quran had allocated. Here, these shareholders, they receive their remaining, whatever remains, they will receive that. And after burial, shrouding, and obviously debts, bequests and everything, whatever's remaining, they will receive the entire amount after giving to the fixed Quranic shareholders. So that's if there are any fixed Quranic shareholders alive. So these people, they take the entire pot. Now, obviously, who takes the entire pot, who takes the entire amount, it will depend on who is the closest agnate relative. So it is possible for someone to be classified as both a fixed Quranic shareholder, meaning category number 4, which we talked about, and agnetic shareholder, which is this category number 5, simultaneously, like for example the father. So he'll get 1/6 plus the remaining, plus the asaba in essence, meaning he will get 1/6 as well as getting 1/6. If there's only daughters, he will also get his remaining share, because he will be the asaba, he will be the what we're calling the agnetic shareholder. Now there are 3 types of agnetic shareholder, and we're going to discuss each one in detail. So in the beginning we understood Asabat and Nasabi. Asabat and Nasabi are now broken up into 3 categories. First one is the most important one we see is heirs by themselves, meaning Asaba binafsihi. Okay, so Asaba binafsihi, heirs by themselves, meaning they don't need anybody else to be an Asaba. Simple and straightforward. So these are males that are related through males only, who are related to the deceased through male connection only. So without a female intermediary, without anyone in between. So Zayd, for example, the deceased, and his paternal uncle are connected through Zayd's father and grandfather. So Zayd's father going up to his grandfather, and then his grandfather's son is the uncle. So you understand that Zayd is related to the uncle. How you go up one father, up to grandfather, and then down one to the because you can't go up one and sideways, because that's not really a lineage relationship. That's that's just brothers. But anyway, you understand the point that Zayd is related to his uncle through males only. Okay, this makes the uncle of Zayd his asaba binafsihi. So there are four groups of relatives that are heirs by themselves. In terms of groups, you have to understand as well. So we have firstly sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, all the way down. So these are the descendants. So that's that. The second group is father, grandfather, great-grandfather, all the way up. These are the ascendants. Then you have brothers of the deceased, followed by their sons, meaning nephews of the deceased. And then their sons, meaning grandnephews, all the way down, great-grandnephews, carrying on going, meaning brothers' family. This includes full brother and agnate brother, so whichever brother it is. Then you've got number four, fourth category is paternal uncles, followed by their sons. Then, so for uncle, paternal uncle, and then their sons would be the cousin brother of the deceased. All the way down, you got grand cousin and like this. Cousins and their sons and grandsons. If none of these relatives are alive, then the father's uncle and his sons, etc., and their grandfather's uncle and his sons, etc., will inherit. Okay, I'll explain this further as you can understand this more in a graphic way, inshallah. So the aforementioned relatives, these relatives that we've talked about, have been mentioned in order of priority. So sons are number one priority, meaning descendants, number one priority. Then you got ascendants, then the brothers, then the uncles and their family, like this. So the son is the most entitled, as we understood, and it carries on going in this order. So now I'd just like to display this to you. I'll give you this example. I'll make you understand this in a diagram, inshallah. But just to finish off this, if there are more than one level of heirs by themselves, asaba binafsihi, is more than one within the same group, then those relatives who are closest in connection to the deceased will be given priority. So if, for example, the deceased has sons and grandsons, then obviously the sons will get priority, will get preference over the grandsons. The grandsons will get nothing. And the full brother will get preference over the agnate brother because he's got double relationship in comparison to the agnate brother who's related only through the father. And more than one of the same group, okay, will share equally. So if there's two sons, then they will share equally. Likewise, if there's two cousin brothers, they will share equally. Okay, not that if there's two sons and two is all, yeah? So hopefully you understand all of this. So now if we just explain this, so we have for example, a deceased person is at the center. Now we see the first agnate relative of this deceased is the son. And then we have grandson. And it carries on going down. Okay, so these are the first group, you can say first group, which are the furu', the descendants, we're saying descendants of the deceased. That's number one, group number one. Then we have the father, we have grandfather going all the way up. Okay, and these are the usul, meaning the ascendants. So first was descendants, then the ascendants. Group number two is the ascendants. Then group number three, we have brother, right? This is hawashi. Okay, within group number three, I'll just make it subgroup. Group number three, brother comes first. Then comes the brother's son, nephew, and carries on going down, grandnephew. These are furu'ul hawashi or far'ul hawashi or hashia. Okay, if there were more than one brother, all of them will be equal. And if there was more than one brother, and meaning they weren't alive, but their nephews, their brother, their sons, nephew is in relation to the deceased, yes? So this is called far'ul hashia or far'ul hawashi. This is what we can say our number four subcategory of number three. You can put it all as together, or we can call it a group four, like we have done here nicely. Then from the father, if you see, we're offshooting uncle. Okay, the next group, uncle, this is hashiyatul usul. So the usul we have, this is the hashia of that usul, or hashiyatul asl, meaning the sideways, because hashia is like the sideways, right? Of the siblings of the father, in essence. So if there's more than one uncle, they're all the same, they're equal, as long as they're full brothers of the father. and this is our group number 5. Then we go down from the uncle, and we have the cousin in relation to the deceased, the son of the uncle, and this is, it carries on going all the way down. This is now far'u hashiyatul usul, the descendant of the person on the side of the person on top of you. So this is our group number 6. So this is obviously showing us all the relatives, the asabat in essence, the asaba bi nafsihi. In a nutshell, all of these are the ones. So they're all related through males is the main thing. Okay? Obviously, they are males related through males. Now we move on to our second type of asaba, an-nasabi. The asaba, the agnatic shareholder who is related through lineage. So this is, first one was the asaba binafsihi, who didn't need anybody else, who was not dependent on anybody else to be a asaba, to be an agnatic shareholder. Here we have now heirs by virtue of another, asaba bi ghayrihi, and it's fairly obvious. This is the female relatives for whom the Sharia has already stipulated some half or 2/3 share, but due to the presence of the brother now, their brother, they become heirs by virtue of another, and will receive half of what their brother receives in essence. So heirs by virtue of another are of 3 types. You see, the first is 3 categories, 3 types: daughters, then you got the sons, daughters, sons, daughters, and so on. Okay, not the daughters, only the sons, daughters, and sons, daughters, and so on. So this is the first category of the asaba bi ghayrihi. So they will become asaba only in the presence of their brother, their relative brother in essence. So the daughter who has a brother, or the son's daughter who has son's son also present. So the son's daughter will also become a asaba, but asaba bi ghayrihi, where in that scenario the son's son would become an asaba bi nafsihi, like that. So then you got full sisters, and then you got agnate sisters. So these are all those heirs who are heirs by virtue of another, asaba bi ghayrihi, because of somebody else they are asaba. And then we have third category, heirs together with another, meaning asaba ma'a ghayrihi, they are asaba with another person. So these are full and agnate sisters. They can only be the full sister or the agnate sister who become agnatic shareholder in the presence of a daughter or granddaughters. So in the presence of daughters or granddaughters, the full and agnate sisters will become a asaba, but asaba ma'a ghayrihi, with another person. So with the other, in the presence of the other daughter or granddaughter. That's the reason why they will become a asaba, because they are in the presence of another person, not bi ghayrihi. Bi ghayrihi was different, meaning because that other person is also becoming an asaba, and this in asaba bi ghayrihi, this person, meaning the daughter, full daughter, gagnate, they also become an asaba. In this case, where we're talking about asaba ma'a ghayrihi, the reason it's different is because the person who they are becoming an asaba because of, meaning the daughter or granddaughter, they are not becoming an asaba. They are receiving their normal share. But this person here that we're talking about, the full agnate sister, they are becoming an asaba. That's why we're calling him asaba ma'a ghayrihi. So this is because of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ij'alul akhawat ma'al banati asabatan, make sisters when in the presence of daughters, make them asaba. So that's what happens here. Next, we go on to the other categories of distribution. Now, these categories of distribution may not apply too much. These, up till the ones that we have done, category number 5, up till asaba, these are the asaba and nasabi. These are very common. Commonly, this is what will happen. Those are the inheritors that will inherit. Now we move on to those who may not be so common. So we have number 6, a emancipation shareholder, who are also asaba, but they're asaba as-sababi. So they are agnatic shareholder due to a cause, due to a sabab. and they are, in essence, this category applies to the cases where the deceased was a slave who was subsequently freed by their master. In such instances, the ex-master would inherit the remaining estate as compensation for granting the slave freedom. If the ex-master has passed away, their closest male relative would inherit in their place, meaning the ex-master's son, for example. This category is obviously not found in modern times, and this will only apply, as we understand, from this category will only apply if the others above were not there. So if the deceased was a slave previously and doesn't have any dhawil furud, meaning doesn't have any fixed Quranic shareholders, doesn't have any asabat, meaning those who were agnetic shareholders, doesn't have anything like that, they are the only one here, then this category would apply. And subsequently, all of the categories that are going to come from now on, it's going to be always in the presence where the previous one is not there. Okay? So if the asaba and nasabi weren't there, then the asaba as-sababi were getting. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So we had the previous category, asaba and nasabi, and then that categorized into three different, we talked about asaba and nasabi being asaba bi nafsihi, asaba bi ghayrihi, and asaba ma'a ghayrihi. So we had that in asabat and nasabi. So if you were to draw it out, it'll become easier for those who may be confused. So you got asabat, two types in essence. Okay, we got the asabat who are nasabi and asabat as-sababi. Nasabi would be those who related through lineage, and then we categorize them as we did. And we got the asaba as-sababi, who can only be the slave who was freed by the master. So the master would become his asaba as-sababi because of emancipating him. Then we come to the next category. If we don't have this asaba, as-sababi, we go to number 7, return to fixed Quranic shareholders. So we go back to category where we said category number 4. So rad bi dhawil furud an-nasabi, we're calling rad bi dhawil furud an-nasabi, return to fixed Quranic shareholders. So this refers to when there is still estate remaining. After having given category number 4, we found no category number 5, we found no category number 6, then we come to category number 7, and there what we do, we go back to the fixed Quranic shareholders and we redistribute amongst them the remainder of the estate. Because as you can understand, we're giving them fractions. Okay, so for example, the daughter will be getting a half, the mother will be getting, for example, 1/6. Now half plus 1/6, there's nobody else left. So there will be some still remaining. Okay, so what's remaining from that, we will return it back onto these dhawil furud and nasabi. So obviously, like I said, this only happens when all above are not there. This redistribution applies solely to relatives with fixed shares through lineage. It has to be through lineage and does not include the spouses. So that's the reason we split up the dhawil furud an-nasabi and dhawil furud as-sababi. So dhawil furud an-nasabi, these are the only ones, if you remember, we did 2 categories of dhawil furud. So the nasabi are the only ones that at this stage, at the stage number 7, this rad applies to. Then we move on to category number 8, where the womb relation shareholders are there. So the dhawil arham. So these are in essence the remainder of the relatives. So these are relatives who are neither the fixed Quranic shareholders nor the agnetic shareholders. So in essence, they are any other type of relative. So this includes the daughter's children now. Likewise, the sister's children, right? Likewise, the father and mother's sisters. Okay, so it's any other person, it includes the mother's parents even, likewise the mother's brother, mother's father, like that. It carries on going. So dhawil arham are these relatives. And again, all of these relatives are receiving the remainder of the share. So if only they are there, if you've given to, there's nobody else there, then they will receive the entire share. And who will receive the entire share will be in accordance to whoever's closest. So number 9 is voluntary liability shareholders. So this is the mawla al-muwalat. So what we call this is a category applies. This category applies when the deceased was unaware of their lineage. They didn't know of their lineage for whatever reason. they were an orphan or something and they grew up, they don't know of their lineage, such as not knowing their father, they don't know the father. In such cases, the deceased might designate someone as their guardian, meaning their mawla. So in their life, they appoint somebody to be their guardian, specifying that this person will inherit their estate upon their death. In return, is not just a bequest, right? So the point of this one is, in return, the guardian agrees to cover any blood money owed if the deceased were to commit a crime requiring such compensation. So the idea is there is an agreement between the two of them, right? That I will cover, as a guardian, I will cover the costs that are incurred because of you, but as a result, I want benefit from you in the sense that if you pass away, then I will inherit from you. So this mutual agreement that they have is known as a contract of mutual guardianship, Aqdul Muwalat. So this is what makes this person the Mawlul Muwalat, voluntary liability shareholder. The next category we have here, category number 10, is a relative whose relation is based on an unsubstantiated claim, who we call in Arabic muqarr lahu bin nasabi ala al-ghayr. Now, who is this? It's slightly complicated, but I will try to simplify, inshallah. So this category involves the deceased making an unsubstantiated claim during his lifetime or during their lifetime that a certain person is their relative. So, for example, claiming someone is his brother. So let's say I made a claim that Zaid over here, he is my brother. So now this person, Zaid, is known as the claimed relative. I have claimed Zaid to be my relative, my brother in this particular case. Now, the implication is that this person, meaning in our example Zaid, is also related to other family members according to the claim, right? So if in accordance to the claim, meaning Zaid is my brother, I made a claim. So in accordance to that, he is also my father's son. Likewise, he's my mother's son, or he's my other brothers and sisters' brother, and so on. So the idea is, the implication here, you can understand, that is the person is related to other family members as well. For instance, if the deceased claims someone as his brother, the person would then be the son of the deceased's father. So these other family members are known as implicated relatives. So my father in this case would be the implicated relative, because I'm implicating him. I am putting somebody, I'm including somebody into his lineage, which he hasn't substantiated. He hasn't confirmed. So that's the point here, that this person, Zaid, who I claim to be my brother, is the muqarr lahu bin nasabi, is the one who I am confessing to, I'm claiming to have nasab with, to have a relationship, but that nasab is not my nasab, is not my lineage. I'm not claiming him to be my son. I'm claiming it on somebody else, on my father, for example, here. So I am including Zaid here in our example into the lineage of somebody else. That's the alal ghayr part, on somebody else. So hopefully this is understood now, who this is. So Zaid is the muqarr lahu bin nasabi alal ghayr, the one who I'm claiming to have relationship with, but I'm putting him into somebody else's lineage. I'm implicating him, or implicating somebody. So if the deceased I've highlighted here because the person is not deceased yet, okay, obviously because he's claimed. But if this deceased now then dies, I've kept it deceased so just so that we can understand who we're talking about. There's too many people going on. So you can understand that this person now who made this claim dies whilst this claim remained unsubstantiated, right? Meaning the father never confirmed that this is my son, Zaid is my son. Then the claimed relative meaning Zaid in our example, will only inherit from the deceased. So I was the one who claimed that Zaid is my brother. So now he will inherit from me only and not from the implicated relatives. But that's only at this stage, meaning at the stage number 10, category number 10, because he won't become my actual brother. By me claiming that Zayd is my brother, he's not going to gain a inheritance share from my inheritance as a brother. When will he receive the inheritance share? At stage number 10 here. That's the point here. This is because a mere claim from the deceased without confirmation, without any confirmation from the implicated relatives, is insufficient to establish actual lineage and inheritance rights. So this is important to understand. So that's what this muqarr lahu bin nasab al-ghayr means. Now, if obviously acknowledgement is found from the implicated relatives, so the father, such as the father or the grandfather, in the case where I claim that so and so is my uncle. So if so and so is my uncle, I'm including him in my grandfather's lineage now. Then the one to whom attribution is made will be considered an actual brother or uncle, respectively, and thereby inherit accordingly. So hopefully this is now clear. But like I say, this is not so common, so it's nothing to worry about too much. But hopefully people have understood this particular category now. Number 11 is one bequest, the one who is bequeathed the entire estate. So Musa lahu bi jami' al-mal. So if there was a person, for example, this category refers to the person for whom the deceased made a will bequeathing the entire estate to. So normally when a will is made for bequeathing the entire estate to that person, they will only receive 1/3. But then we saw that this person has no fixed Quranic shareholders, no agnetic shareholders, no any other categories before this. None of the other categories applied to this person. So they left behind nobody else. So then we'll just go back to the person who they bequeathed the entire estate for, and we say, you know what, you're going to get the entire estate now. So normally they can receive no more than 1/3 of the total estate. However, due to the absence of a higher priority group, they will receive the remaining estate along with the already permitted 1/3. So they'll just receive the entire estate now. So that's category number 11. Number 12 is the state treasury, Baytul Mal. This is obviously if there is no other eligible heir, there's no other heirs above, the estate will then go to the Islamic treasury, to the public treasury, Islamic treasury. Okay, this is what will happen. Now, up until here, traditionally, the books mentioned categories up to here. So this category is typically last resort. And however, later scholars observed that obviously funds from the treasury were not always used correctly. Reason number one. And secondary, or in some cases, there was no state treasury because the Islamic states were no longer existent. So as a result, they introduced a new category, an additional category, which is return to spouses, rad bi zawjain. So if there is a spouse now, so where we had earlier on, we had the rad bi dhawil furud an-nasabi. Now we're doing rad bi dhawil furud as-sababi, in essence. So now we are returning the estate to the spouse. So if there is if they are eligible to inherit and there's this husband or wife, then they will receive the remainder of the estate. So again, this is the final category mentioned by the later scholars. But we came across cases where they weren't even any spouses. There's no spouse left. They've left behind as well. So now what happens in that case? So we had to come up with a additional category, number 14, which is the zakat eligible Muslims, the masarif zakat. So this category you won't find everywhere, but you can understand that there is nowhere else we can give the money. Last resort, the remaining estate will be donated to zakat eligible Muslims, and this has been written in Ahsanul Fatawa and also in Fatawa Darum Zakaria, as you can see in the references there. And this is the last resort. If there is nobody else to give to, then what are we going to do? So these are the categories of distribution. and who will receive the estate of the deceased in this order. So hopefully everyone can remember that. That's quite important. Next, what we will move on to is the factors that will prevent a person from inheriting. So if here there are certain factors that will prevent a person from inheriting, right? So there are two ways a person can be deprived of inheritance or prevented from inheritance, inheriting the estate of the deceased. One way is blocking hajb, which is when in the presence of a closer relative causes the more distant relative to be deprived of inheritance. Like I explained, the grandson won't get it if the son's there, for example. And the other method is prevention, which is hirman, which is when an heir loses their right to inherit due to certain factors. So they lose the entitlement, they lose the eligibility to be able to inherit. So this is called hirman, where they are being prevented from inheriting. The other one was just being hajb, meaning blocked from inheriting. So there's a difference between the two, as you will understand. So whilst these concepts are related, they differ in significant ways. And the person blocked from inheriting is known as a mahjub, and the one prevented from inheriting or inheritance is known as mahroom. Okay, these are terms that are used just to remember these terms. So the first category we'll do today is the hajb, the blocking category. So there are two types of blocking. One is partial blocking, hajb an-nuqsan, we call it. This occurs when an heir's share is reduced due to the presence of a certain relative. Affected heirs include the husband, wife, mother, granddaughter, or agnate sister. So these are the only ones that will be affected by hajb an-nuqsan. So you can understand, if you remember, the husband in the presence of children will no longer receive half, will receive a quarter. Wife in the presence of children will no longer receive a quarter, will receive an eighth. Like this. So the mother will, from 1/3, she will receive a sixth. In certain cases, granddaughter, they will also receive less shares. In the presence of the daughter, she will receive 1/6, for example. And agnate sister, likewise, she can also receive 1/6 if there is a full sister. So these are hajb and nuqsan. So for example, it says the husband receives a quarter instead of half if his deceased wife leaves children. Total blocking. So this is hajb al-hirman. So the hajb and nuqsan, which is nuqsan deficiency, partial blocking. Here you have a total blocking. This is the complete exclusion of an heir from inheriting. For example, the grandfather is fully deprived of inheritance if the deceased father is alive. So this is where they do not receive any share of inheritance because of a more inheritor being there who is before them, who is prioritized. So these are the rules of hajb. So it is obviously is important to note that the blocking that happens, the block is only temporary. Okay, it's temporary block. That's the difference between this one and the next one that we will talk about, where the relative who were alive, the relatives who were alive, were they different, and then the heir who is blocked may have received a share or even a larger share. So it depends. If, for example, let's just take, for example, the grandfather, he's not receiving anything because the father is there. But if the father is no longer alive, the grandfather will now receive a share. Likewise, if the husband was receiving 1/4 of the share because they were children, but if the children passed away before the wife, and then eventually the wife passed away, then the husband will now receive a greater share. So like that, this hajb this type of blocking is temporary. Thus, the heir has not lost their right of inheritance. They've only been blocked. So they haven't lost their entitlement to inherit. That's the very important thing to understand over here. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. So alhamdulillah, today we have been able to get through the remaining categories of distribution. We went through the Dhawil Furudh and Dhawil Furudh firstly. So the fixed Quranic shareholders, they were receiving their share at number 4. Then comes the agnatic shareholders, number 5, the 5th category that we're distributing to. And that's if there's anything left over, they will be given the share next. And we went through quite a bit of detail explaining the asabat, in essence, these agnatic shareholders, the asabat al-nasabi, and then we had asabat al-sababi, which is the next category, number 6. Before we went on to number 6, asabat al-nasabi, we categorized that into 3. We have the asaba bi nafsihi, those who are heirs by themselves, they're not reliant on anybody else. Bi nafsihi, they are agnatic shareholders. So they're males related only through males. And then we had the asaba bi ghayrihi, asaba alongside another person. So they are the female relatives who become asaba with their counterpart. So like a daughter with the son. So in relation to the daughter, it's her brother. When her brother is there, then they will become asaba together, or a sister with her counterpart brother, for example. So like this, these people will become a asaba bi ghayrihi. And then we did the 3rd category, which is asaba ma'a ghayrihi. So this is where they become it's always going to be the full sister or the agnate sister who become a asaba in the presence of a sister or in the presence of a daughter or granddaughter. So the reason why they're ma'a ghayrihi, because the daughter and granddaughter don't become a asaba, they will still receive their half share, whatever they receive, or their 2/3 share. But alongside them, the full sister or the agnate sister will become a asaba. So this is asaba ma'a ghayrihi. Then we went on to the next types, the asaba sababi, which is obviously the master who freed. Then we distribute by giving rad bi dhawil furudh. We go back and give to if we still have left over, we give back to the fixed Quranic shareholders. Then we go to dhawil arham, the other womb relatives. Then we go to any mawlul muwalat, those people who had a mutual agreement of guardianship between. Then we go to muqarlahu bin nasabi ala al-ghayr, relatives whose relation was based on an substantiated claim. Then we went to the one who is bequeathed the entire estate, musalahu bi jami'il mal. Then we lastly gave it to the public treasury, the Islamic Baytul Mal. And if there wasn't a one, then the later scholars introduced the rad bi zawjain, meaning return to spouses. And lastly, we added a zakat eligible Muslim will be given it if there is nobody else to give to. Then we went on to the factors that prevent inheritance. So we explained that there are 2 types of prevention of inheritance here. One is blocking, which we're calling hajb, and the other is prevention, which we're calling hirman. So we did the hajb, the blocking, where there's 2 types of blocking. One is a partial blocking and one is a total blocking. Partial blocking would be like when for example, the husband is partially blocked because of the presence of his deceased wife's children. And you have a full blocking where, like, for example, the grandfather is fully blocked from inheriting because of the presence of the father. So this type of blocking is temporary. It's only because that blockade is there. The person who's blocking them from inheriting is there. If they are no longer there, then they will not obviously block the person. So this is the hajb that we've talked about.